I've been working all week on my talk. I really do, even though some people don't think I've worked on it. But anyway, I get what I need, and then you guys get whatever I got, sort of. But on the way over here, what I got was a remembrance of when I was somewhere between 5 and 8 years old, and we were living in Missouri, had not moved here yet. And I can remember walking across our big living room, and the TV was on. You know, the one with the round screen, the black and white one. Yeah, that. And there was something going on TV, and a bunch of people and noise and banners going up and down. As I look at it in these years, I think it was either the 56 or the 59 presidential stuff going on. And I remember distinctly, I'm walking across the living room, TV's over here, and I stopped, and my little mind said, I have something to say. And I remembered that when I was in the School of Ministry. So I was glad to have a place where I could maybe say whatever it is I came to say. But the surprise was on me. Because what I got out of all of it was I get to learn. Doing the research, I have 5 stories in 7 pages here. I won't give you all 7, I promise. But it's to me, that is what the spiritual journey is. I'm growing. And if I open my mouth and it says something to you, then maybe that's part of your growth too. And maybe it's part of not listening to that growth also. So here we are, we're talking about light and the 4th of July, and definitely before tonight I'm going to get to hear Jimmy Cagney do I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy again. Anybody have to watch that annually? Yes. And it's just such a wonderful time to have all of this happening. A Sunday, a talk, the 4th of July, Marilyn's here, Joe's here, Dan's here, all of us. And what a neat thing that is to put all of that together and realize that maybe, just maybe, that is our light today. You know, we look for those flashes of wisdom that would come to us. I've seen the light. I've seen the light. In fact, I'm going to share a little bit of Ernest's light experience with you today. But there was also something that came to my mind in the process of thinking about all of this. And that is something that my mom and dad loved to say, and I never understood exactly what it was. And somehow or other, somebody would eventually say, "Where was Moses when the light went out?" And then somebody would say, "In the dark." And I always wondered, you know, I never could find that in the Bible. I have tried and tried and tried to find that in the Bible, so eventually I went to the internet instead, and I found an even better story, which is probably why my dad liked it so much. It actually goes back to about 1878, and the story of a bunch of guys in a back room gambling, okay? And there was a lot of money on the table. And one of the fellows was there who needed a lot of money right then. Guess what his name was? Moses, yes. And so during the process of all, and it was actually a song that was written for an early vaudeville, and the lights went out. Was it a thunderstorm or malevolence of some other kind? And so the question of the song was, where was Moses when the lights went out? Because everybody was in the dark, because after they turned the lights back on, they couldn't find Moses or the money. So where was Moses when the light went out, you know? And I realized my dad did a few backroom deals himself that probably was very close to Moses' tracking. But this idea about where's the light come from and when is it dark and what do we do with it? Have you ever considered that? Yeah. God, show me the light. Show me the light. So that's part of what we're going to look at today. But then, in my research and my reading, I found some wonderful information from, are you ready for this? What was the fellow's name? Oh, I knew I'd know it exactly here. Hold on. That's why. Stay with me. No, there's Moses. Got Moses. Okay. Kathryn, what did you do? Left something with the cat to read. Okay. Kathryn. I got so busy with Moses. Hold on. This is horrible. I don't usually do this. Rod Sterling. What was the name of the show? Thank you. I knew it'd come up sooner or later. That's horrible. Anyway, so in learning about light, I also went back and learned about Rod Sterling. And one of their episodes, because there was this woman who was terrified of dying. And she heard a knock at the door. And she was afraid it was death coming to get her. She'd lived a long time, and the last couple of years hadn't been doing so well for her. And so when there was the knock at the door, she knew. She knew it was going to be death coming after her. Well, as it turned out, it was a contractor who was coming to tell her that her house was about to die because it was so depleted that they need to tear it down for safety factor as well as new building. And so she realized there kind of was a death about that. And that was a lot better than just, herself dying, but she still couldn't let go of that dying. Now, one of the things I learned, and this is a true story, you can find it on the internet. You can find everything on the internet. But the guy, his name was Harold, okay? And he set up this ruse to gain her trust so that he could get in the house and tell her all of this information. Well, he didn't have to have a ruse to get her to open the door, at least if it had been me. Because it just so happened that although this was shown in 1962, the contractor was Robert Redford. You knew. I mean, he wouldn't have to do much for a ruse to get me to open the door, And so there are times when we're trying to make changes in our lives and we're terrified of doing it. And we know the time has come that changes need to be made, but we know what we know and we don't want to know anything else. Even when someone comes to the door to, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. I recently changed my greeting on my phone and it says, I'm not selling my house, I'm not buying your solar, and I know you're not from the government and here to help me. If you're anything other than those, leave a message. But this whole idea of people are trying to help us, they're trying to show us something, they're trying to move us in a new direction that's for our greater good, and we're stuck. We are so stuck in the same place all the time. Anybody else feel stuck? How many of you think somebody else stuck you? You guys are, wow, that's a hard audience. Oh yeah, you got that. So what I got into with regards to this idea of the light is we do our prayers. We do our meditations. We do our classes. And I know all of you are diligent in your daily meditations so that you understand, what am I to do? Show me what I am to do. This is what we always seek. We want someone to tell us what to do. And then as soon as they tell us, like the contractor did, get out of your house, we don't want to go. We don't want to go. So how do we find that balance between the dark and the light and what we are capable of and what we're willing to do And who are we blaming along the way? How many of you have wanted something desperately? Maybe it was a college degree. Maybe it was a particular job. Maybe it was a particular life partner. And couldn't manifest it, couldn't get there. No matter what I did, I've done everything there is to do about this. And I'm not getting anywhere. I'm just wandering around in the darkness. And you prayed for an awakening. You prayed for an awareness. You prayed for the entire cosmos to change instantaneously so you could have what you wanted. And then you got it. It's like, okay, now what? Now what? This light and dark business that we play in our lives is really challenging. Because it is a play, it is a game, it is something to keep us busy, like those stupid things on our phones that we do, the games all the time, constantly. Anybody else guilty? Oh, this is not my crowd, Joe. But they don't tell the truth, too, so that's all right. That's my crowd. What is the whole purpose of this light and dark? There's a great story in our movement here about the Whittier experience. Any of you ever heard about the Whittier experience? Okay. That's when Ernest Holmes was at the Whittier Church, Whittier, California. And he was dedicating that church. This is 1959. Holmes passed away in April of 1960. Give you a little extra information early. And what happened was, he was sitting there, you know, there were a bunch of guys, they were guys, sitting there, and this is interesting because their lectern was rattling too. And so there's a recording of it, but you hear this creak, creak, creak as they leaned on it and talked all the time. But they were able to get the majority of the information out. And what happened towards the end is that Ernest was giving his talk, and he was being very eloquent, and he was very intense, and he was dedicated to what he was saying. And in the process of that, there wasn't any place for him to be in that room, if I can put it that way. That's my definition of it. That he came to a point where he clearly kind of left the room. A lot of people spoke to this. They watched him. They heard him. We've listened to the recording many, many, many times. And what happened was he finally reached a point after his eloquent talk that most people couldn't follow. He said, I see it. I see it. The veil is so thin, and I shall speak no more. And later that evening, one of the ministers was living with him, and they were both widowers at that time and kept company with one another. And he sat and he said, Ernest, what happened? And Ernest said, I don't know if I can tell you. I don't know if I can tell you. But he told him as much as he could, and then later, after Ernest had passed away, the author, Adele St. John's, was doing a biography of his life. And she asked this gentleman who had been staying at Ernest, can you tell me what it was about? So he told in the best way that he could. And he said, Ernest said we should never speak of it, though. And I find that very interesting, that we should never speak of it. How often have you had a metaphysical experience or an emotional experience, and you can hardly wait to tell your best friend? Marilyn and I have burned up many telephone wires over the years of, I got to tell you what just happened. And it's an experience, it's an awakening, it's a realization of what we were to see in that moment. The light was turned on. How do we keep that to ourselves when it's so fantastic, when it's so amazing? We can't engage in it ourselves, even by ourselves. We have to talk to someone about it. How does this sound to you? Am I making any sense here? What do I do with this now? Each one of us, whatever our stage in life, whatever our education, whatever our profession or our family background, we've had those moments of, wow, what in the world was that? The interesting thing is, yes, we need to talk about it, but I see it more as an invitation for us to linger in that space a little bit longer. Because in our humanness, our physicality here, we can't always embody all of it at once. It takes a while. It takes years. It takes for me being 4 years old until now to see some of what was lifted up in me in that moment. And to realize this is the other piece of it. We think we've gotten our marching orders and we know exactly what to do now. I thought I knew, but everything that I studied isn't what I do, except for the 3 years in ministerial training. What I wound up doing was it asked me to learn. It asked me to understand, to listen to others a little bit more. So the answer isn't always the answer, is what this means. All right, let's flip over to the 4th of July. I was thinking also this morning about my great-grandparents and beyond that came from different countries. My great-grandfather who left Germany just prior to World War I, and he left to get out of the Kaiser's army, and it's almost like the Von Trapp family. They went up over the mountains to hide out and left in Belgium to come to Missouri. And the ones in the 16 and 1700s who came from Britain and who came from Ireland and various ones. And I've asked myself repeatedly, what was that journey about for them? How do we honor that in this country that we have, of those who saw the light somewhere, somehow? They were given a message. They ran it the best way they knew how. And then they ask for a little bit more. And so then we come into these things called pandemics. I have to say this. I know this is being recorded, but last year in July, a very precious friend of mine passed away from the COVID, and since then I have referred to it as the pandemic because it really upset me. And yet here we are with it, okay? And the things that change in our lives, where can we escape to? You want to go back to Germany? You want to go back to Russia? You want to go back to Mexico? Wherever it is your families came from? Or is there another step for us? What is this light that has been given us through something that looks horrible? It's an awakening. It's a standing in a moment in the living room watching a TV show and going, whoa, that's mine to do. Each one of us has that constantly. And whether it's the American way or it's another way, something is being given to us now, and to be open to that, to see that, to feel that, to ask the questions not of anybody else but of ourselves. Why am I here right now for this? This is who I am. I showed up. I opened the door. I opened the door. But am I willing to let it in? That's the big question. Am I willing to let the light in, to cleanse me, to illuminate for me something I've never seen before? I think it is. I think that's why we're here in the first place. I think that's why we're here, because of this event and this day and that day and this relationship and that job. And to ask the question of ourselves constantly. Am I seeing the light? The light. Join with me for a moment in the recognition of the light that does blossom in and through each and every one of us. It is who we are. It is who we are. In Rod Sterling, The quote was made, whatever we see in the darkness has always been there in the light. And so as we move into the rest of our days of our lives, whatever it may be, 100 years, 20 years, 17 years, 20 minutes, what is the light that's wanting to shine on me, in me, as me, and what is the light that I can offer to the rest of the world? This is the day that we recognize that in a greater way than we ever have before. It's a tremendous blessing to be the light of God. That is our role. That is our goal. And that is our blessing.